Hi everyone. Today's message is titled Managing Life on a Reduced Income. Managing Life on a Reduced Income. And it's going to be a two-part series. Today we'll be looking at the non-financial response to a situation where one is facing a pay cut. And the next time we will look at the financial response to a situation of a pay cut. No doubt, life is full of uncertainties. No one is able to tell how tomorrow looks like. A lot of times, sudden changes happen in life and they find us flat-footed. They find us not prepared. Those people in employment will agree with me that the employment world is full of uncertainties. Of course, the people in business experience uncertainties at a whole different level. But today I'm focusing on the people in employment. Changes like change in reporting lines, change in workstation, change in department, reduction in pay, and job loss find employed people a lot of times unprepared, and they cause destabilization in the lives of those people. A lot of times when the news of a pay cut happens, different people will process it differently, and different people get affected differently. There are those people, once they receive the information of a pay cut, they quickly go into a stress situation. They begin to experience stress. And stress is simply a feeling of pressure due to the demands of life. When you feel that life is calling from you more than you can offer, then that begins to be a stress situation. And stress is normal, because when you are facing a pay cut situation, you begin to look at the way you've been spending your money, and you begin to look at how you will manage that expenditure with a reduced income, and you begin to feel that particular pressure on you. Now, when stress is sustained for long, it has high chances of sinking into depression, deteriorating into depression. Now, there are those people who will also be faced with fear when they receive the news of a pay cut. They begin to look at the future that begins to look uncertain. So they begin to have the fear of the unknown. They do not know how the future is going to look like with a reduced pay. Some people begin to have the fear of failure. They had plans, financial plans, they had goals. Some people had investment objectives. And so when they receive the news of a pay cut, they begin to wonder whether they will succeed in the plans that they had. And they begin to develop fear of failure, and that can also be very dangerous. Then, number 3, we have people who will go into anxiety. And anxiety is simply a response to stress. You see, stress was the thought of, I am facing a reduced income, so I am feeling pressure. The demands of my expenditure versus my income is putting pressure on me. Anxiety comes in to make one begin to wonder whether with that reduced pay, they'll be able to sustain themselves. So anxiety makes you begin to think, so what will happen with this reduced pay? How are things going to roll with this reduced pay? And this anxiety, if it's sustained for long, it also has chances of degenerating into what we call anxiety disorder. And in some cases, it can also degenerate into depression. Anxiety mixed with fear also turns into anxiety disorder. And this is where one begins to say, I have a feeling I will not survive with this reduced pay. I have a feeling that life will overwhelm me. And when one begins to entertain such thoughts, then they begin to get affected more and more. Then, number 4, we have those who get angry when they receive the news of a pay cut. They become mad at their bosses. There are cases where people have actually fought with their bosses physically. There are those who get mad and angry at their colleagues, and especially if their colleagues are not facing a pay cut. Sometimes you begin to feel like your colleagues are responsible for what has befallen you, right? So this is a special category of people, because when anger is sustained, it can also result into so many other negative things. And then number 5, we have those who sink into who sink into depression. You know, when, as I mentioned, when stress is sustained for long, when anxiety is sustained for long, then people begin to experience a situation where they are having a mood disorder. They are constantly sad. They are constantly disinterested in many things that are happening in life. And this is where depression begins to come in. And the effects of depression are at another level. So, when you're faced with the news of a pay cut, everyone is faced with the choice of whether to respond to the news or to react to the news. The two are different. Reacting is negative. Reacting is defensive. It is almost the first thing that everyone wants to do when they face news that is not favorable to them. Now, reacting has the potential of escalating the problem and beginning to attract other problems that will make the situation even worse. Responding, on the other hand, is positive. Responding allows you to take time to internalize the news, to internalize the reality that has happened. And then you begin to ask yourself, what is the best way for me to handle what has happened? If you have a patient and you took them to hospital today, if you came back tomorrow to visit them, and the doctor tells you that your patient is reacting to medication, you get worried. But if the doctor says that your patient is responding to medication, you begin to smile. And that is the whole difference between reacting and responding. Sadly, many people react to situations rather than respond to them. Allow me to invite you to the category of people who begin to respond to changes in our environments rather than reacting to them. So as I said, today we'll look at the non-financial response to a pay cut situation. So when you are faced with a pay cut situation, how do you begin to respond to it? How do you begin to adjust yourself so that then you are able to protect yourself, especially mentally, so that you do not sink into a situation where psychologically you've been affected beyond what you can handle? And I want to share quickly some 7 tips that can help you when you're facing a situation of a pay cut. Number 1, once you receive the news of a pay cut, it's important that you understand the origin of the pay cut. Understand the genesis of the pay cut. In many cases, your employer will communicate to you that owing to changes in our business environment, we are no longer able to sustain paying your salaries the way we have been doing. Seek to understand the genesis. When you seek to understand the genesis, you begin to eliminate malice in the decision to have you people get a pay cut. When you seek to understand the genesis, you begin to feel that this is as a result of what has happened. It is circumstantial and not victimization. Number 2, seek to understand the nature of your pay cut. When your employer says that you will face a pay cut, seek to know the nature. Broadly, a pay cut will either be permanent or temporary. If the employer communicates that it's going to be a permanent pay cut, and where they don't communicate, please ask them the nature of the pay cut. If it's permanent, then you begin to prepare your mind. You begin to ask yourself what you will do so that then you can bounce back financially to where you are or even a better position. It begins to speak to your mind, to begin to position your mind, to begin to handle that situation from a knowledge point of view. Now, if the pay cut is temporary, like is the case in many cases, especially for businesses that have been affected by COVID, what I've seen is that employers will tell their employees that owing to what has happened, we will take a pay cut of this magnitude for this particular period. Then we will review and see how business will look like at that particular point. So if it is temporary, then you begin to also tell your mind that this situation is temporary. It is going to last, not a lifetime. And therefore, you can begin to also adjust yourself to respond accordingly. Number 3, you need to accept reality. Reality is here with you that a pay cut has happened. Your employer has communicated, you've received the letter. The most common thing for every average person is to go into denial. All of us go into denial. But how long you stay in denial will differentiate those that wake up, stand up, and begin moving, and those that remain in a fallen state. So accept reality and tell your mind that this has happened and this is going to be the new normal. That way, your mind begins to ready itself for what lies ahead of you. Number 4, be thankful for what you have. You know, it could have been worse. Different things have happened to people in this season. Look, in this season, if we rank what has happened to people, we have people who still have their full salary. And these people have their lives normal in this season. They still earn what they used to earn before the changes that have happened. Then below them, we have those who are taking a pay cut, like you. So if you're facing a situation of a pay cut, you are at a better position. You are not the worst, because worse things have happened to people. Below you, we have those that have gone on unpaid leave, where the employer is not able to pay them. They haven't lost their jobs, but they have been forced into taking an unpaid leave. So they're staying at home, at least with the knowledge that they still have their jobs, but they have nothing financial coming their way. So you are at a better position. Then below those ones, we have those that have completely lost their jobs. So you have a lot to be thankful for. Now, there is a magic that being thankful does to people. When you take a moment to thank God for what He has done in your lives, when you take a moment to enumerate the things that have happened positively around you, then you begin to create a positive environment. You begin to expel negativity from your space. So even if you are feeling low about the news of the pay cut, you begin to find yourself having a new lease of life. When you begin to remember someone who is on unpaid leave, when you begin to remember someone who has lost their job. That is the beauty of being thankful for what you have. Number 5, it is important that you also involve your immediate family members. Those people that depend on you, or those people that you are doing life together with. It's important that you come clean to them and inform them of what has happened. Number 1 is because those people form your support system. They will be your first line of support when you are faced with such a situation. They will encourage you. If it's your spouse, for instance, if they are economically active, then the two of you can now sit down and begin to find ways of adjusting, put in mind what you have from your spouse and from yourself. So it's important that you let them in. Number 2, letting them in on what has happened will also be able to manage their expectations. Remember, in a family setting, people have expectations on you based on the standards you've set. And in many cases, you set those standards based on what your income has looked like. So when your income is being lowered, it's important that you communicate to them so that then you can be able to manage the expectations, so that you do not go into a situation where your stress levels begin to increase because they're still making demands based on your previous position, yet your supply level has been reduced. Number 6, it's important to ask for help. When you feel overwhelmed, when you feel like you cannot be able to handle the reality of the news of a pay cut, if you feel that you are stressed and your stress is being sustained for long, if you feel that you are anxious and your anxiety is staying with you for long, it's important that you seek professional help. Find someone you can speak to. Find someone you can confide to, someone who can be able to understand you, someone who can be able to be of help to you, someone who can be able to speak positivity to you. So it's important, it's not a sign of weakness for you to ask for help when you're faced with such a situation. And lastly, it's important that you take it to God in prayer. When you're faced with situations like this that you cannot handle, it is only God that will help us bear our burdens, those that seem so heavy on us. The book of Philippians 4:6, we are reminded that we should not be anxious in anything, but in everything, through prayer, we're supposed to bring our petitions to God, make them known to God, because it is Him who will give us the grace to handle the information about a pay cut. It is Him who will give you the strength to handle it. It is Him who will make that situation more temporary than even what your employer has spoken to you. It is Him who will open other doors. So, always remember to bring it to God in prayer. Thank you so much. May God bless you abundantly.